Thank you, Julia. This is Joe Kramer. I'm going to be starting us off today, and Joe Schultz will be picking it up a little later on in the presentation. So, to get us going, thank you all for joining us. Today, these are your presenters, as Julia has told you. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to cover. To start out, we're going to look at, going to give you a really brief national overview of anaerobic digester systems and focusing on agricultural systems. Talk a little bit about why anaerobic digestion is used. Then focus in on Wisconsin and look at biogas systems being used in Wisconsin. Talk about how biogas is used in those systems, and then get into a discussion of issues facing the biogas industry in Wisconsin and what some options may be for addressing those issues. And then look kind of a little forward-looking look at the potential in Wisconsin and how biogas systems give us some unique local opportunities. So just to give you a little background on, well, I want to tell you where most of our data on this presentation has come from. There are two major sources. The first one is the AgSTAR project database, and this is a publicly accessible database of farm-based digester systems throughout the U.S. It includes information on systems from the point, actually, I believe it even has some planned systems information in there, but basically from construction through shutdown, the life cycle of a system, and then information on what types of animals are feeding these systems, how many, what the herd size is for various farms, how the biogas is being used on these farms, what different types of applications, and then some additional information on digester types that are installed on farms. It's a very nice database. It is updated by probably maybe some of you on the call today help feed information into AgSTAR to keep this database up to date, but it's a great resource. The link for that is at the bottom of the page. The other primary source of information for us is the Wisconsin Biogas Survey Report that was recently published March of 2016 by the Wisconsin Energy Office, now the Wisconsin Office of Energy Innovation. The primary researcher on that is Clinton Fandrich with the Energy Office. This survey contacted anaerobic digester owners and operators throughout the state. This included not just agricultural systems, but also looked at other types of biogas systems, industrial anaerobic digesters, digesters used at wastewater treatment plants, and even landfill gas capture systems where the landfill gas is used for another purpose. The purpose of this study was to develop baseline numbers for the state of Wisconsin in a real thorough way and get a good measure of current status of systems. It also provided information on how biogas is being used, what types of applications, or whether it's being flared. And another goal was to identify the challenges they're facing, the developers and owners of biogas systems in running their systems, keeping them running, in developing new systems and installing new systems. And then ultimately was to explore, in conversations with people in the industry, was to explore solutions. How can we get past these challenges? And that report is also available for download.
Hey, Joe, can you speak up just a little bit? Our phone quality, unfortunately, is not all that great right now.
You bet. I certainly can. I didn't want to blast people out with my voice. Okay. A digester system is basically an enclosed vessel. Oxygen's kept out, thus anaerobic. Organic feedstocks are fed into this container where they're heated, generally to depending on the digester design and the feedstocks, 100 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. There's often some mixing in the system as well. during the and the substrate is kept in there for a certain residence time, again based on system design. Biogas is produced, and that biogas is taken off and used for can be used for various energy applications, or maybe just flared. And the digestate that comes out can either go through further treatment, can be used directly for something, or is just disposed of. Now, and this slide, and I apologize for the grainy photo, but this slide is just to illustrate that digester systems are not new systems. They've been used in, this is a slide from a farm system in Michigan that was installed in 1981. And this digester digested dairy manure. It operated for 21 years. The brothers, David and John Puchel, ran this system on a small dairy farm, and we're very happy with it. So looking at the overall U.S., and again, this information is from the AgSTAR database, there are currently 242 operational systems in the U.S. And again, we're just looking at agricultural systems. 17 additional systems are currently under construction, for a total of 259 current and under construction systems. Looking at different states, we can see these are the 8 highest digester using states for farm digesters. Wisconsin currently has the largest number of digesters, and with New York following very closely behind. It looks like the conditions for continued digestion or continued development of digester systems in New York are currently much more favorable than in Wisconsin, despite them having many fewer cows. So I would not be surprised if New York bypasses Wisconsin as the leading state for digesters. So why would you install an anaerobic digester? From an operational standpoint, running the manure that your livestock produces through a digester can ultimately reduce fertilizer costs for the farm, because the digested manure takes on traits more similar to commercial manure or commercial fertilizers, and can allow some farms to displace fertilizer purchases and use the manure more like commercial fertilizer. Something that probably doesn't get stressed enough is anaerobic digestion really reduces odors from manure storage and field application, which can be important for people in communities that have dairy farms nearby. And having that reduced odor can contribute to operational flexibility for the farm. You don't have to worry about applying manure to your land, ruining your neighbor's barbecue on Saturday. And it also, because the manure is of a more digested manure is of a more moderate pH level, you can apply the manure over after crops have emerged without worrying about burning them. So manure doesn't have to be stored as long, and they can be applied more when it's convenient for the farm. If you separate solids out of your digestate, the liquid that comes out of the digester, you can produce bedding from that, and a number of dairy farms do that and use that bedding to bed their cows. And ultimately, the thing that we all get the most excited about is it generates biogas that can be used for on-farm applications. From an environmental standpoint, there are a number of reasons why digestion is desirable. Digested manure has reduced BOD, or biochemical oxygen demanding compounds, and pathogens that make it less environmentally harmful should it be washed into surface waters. It also, the process of using an anaerobic digester on a farm also has lower greenhouse gas emissions over a business as usual operation, especially if in particular if a farm is using lagoons to store their manure, which is a common practice in the Midwest. Digested manure also, the nutrients are transformed in digested manure from an organic form to inorganic form, which makes them more bioavailable for plants. So it follows that more nutrients should be taken up by plants rather than washed into waterways, which is generally a good thing. And farmers have reported that they need to use fewer herbicides on the farm when they use digested manure rather than applying the raw manure, which often has a lot of weed seeds in it. Digested manure, weed seeds tend to be less active, and so they can purchase fewer and apply fewer herbicides. And they also generate, worth mentioning twice, they also generate renewable biogas, which can be used for a number of things, but it's generally energy related. The AgSTAR has put out an infographic that explains what the benefits that we've received from using biogas for energy from animal waste. And basically, digestion of animal waste since 1994 has resulted in 5.3 billion kilowatt hours of renewable energy generation and avoided carbon dioxide equivalent emissions of 19 million metric tons, which is the equivalent of 2 billion gallons of gasoline consumed, 2.6 million homes electricity use for 1 year, and 5 coal-fired power plants production of carbon dioxide for 1 year. So pretty impressive. So the most common uses for biogas, the most common use by far is for cogeneration, generating electricity and capturing heat from that generation. 86% of the systems in the AgSTAR database are doing electricity or doing cogeneration. On farms, cogeneration is definitely the most common. Another 7% are using it for heat only, and there are a smaller number who flare, and there's just a few systems out there currently who are further processing the biogas to produce compressed natural gas or compressed renewable natural gas, or doing pipeline insertion, upgrading and inserting it into a natural gas pipeline. The database also includes information on what types of manure is being fed into the digesters. 80% of the systems out there are digesting dairy manure. 12% of that, by far the most common. 12% are digesting swine manure, and there's 4% that are processing beef, and 4% that are poultry or duck manure. And a number of these systems are processing more than one type of manure. It's just kind of a coincidence that they add up to 100%. But 40% of the systems out there report that they are also co-digesting other feedstocks, either on-farm or off-farm feedstocks with the manure to boost biogas production. Turning now to Wisconsin biogas systems, the survey report found that Wisconsin currently has 34 farm systems that are operational, 81 municipal wastewater treatment plants that are using anaerobic digestion, 21 industrial wastewater plants that are being used by one industry or another use anaerobic digestion to process their wastewater, and Wisconsin has 35 landfills that have gas capture, so the landfill gas could be used for another purpose. Farm owners and industry use anaerobic digester systems for slightly different reasons. For industry, digestion is generally chosen because it's the most cost-effective wastewater treatment option for their high-strength wastewaters. It's part of their compliance strategy, and it's generally one stage in a system of wastewater treatment. It's less often used as a means to as a means to bring in additional income for the industry or for the wastewater treatment plant. Farm systems, on the other hand, are less often used for installed for a compliance issue. It's more for on-farm benefits and improving operations. And there's farms, because of the nature of the operation, generally have more interest in deriving other financial benefits from having their running a system on the farm. Here's a breakdown for the Wisconsin digester systems. And I want you to pay attention to the blue bar, which is electricity, those that are using biogas for electricity generation. This kind of illustrates the point from the previous slide that out of the municipal wastewater treatment plants, only 21% are generating electricity with the biogas, whereas if you look at agricultural systems, 76% are using biogas to generate electricity. This is largely because anaerobic digestion systems and energy generation systems are expensive, and farms need to bring in some income from that operation to make them to make the economics favorable. So let's look at the current situation facing farm biogas system owners in Wisconsin. The survey found that a number of farm owners are shutting down systems or facing system shutdowns due to changes in power purchase agreements with utilities. Very few new systems are going in. A once really strong in-state development, biogas development industry is essentially halted. And in-state developers are now working primarily outside Wisconsin, because the status in Wisconsin isn't good. So what are the biggest issues? For Wisconsin, and this is true in other states throughout the country as well, there's a really weak market for biogas-based energy. Farmers are just not able to get the income from energy generation that they need to make their systems work. And that's really the overarching issue, and a primary issue. If that issue was solved, if the market was valuing biogas-based energy higher, a number of these other issues would kind of disappear. A secondary issue is the availability of capital for getting systems, for financing systems and getting them installed. And I'm going to discuss each of these in a little more detail. Regulatory compliance is an issue too. It's hard to sometimes figure out what rules the operation is going to need to follow. And policy support is weak in Wisconsin for biogas systems. And then, because it's a competitive industry, there's not a lot of communication among people in the industry, which is understandable, and very little cooperation, because they're working against each other to try to bid on the few existing projects. Sorry. So looking at the weak market, why is the market weak for biogas? In Wisconsin, we have an old renewable portfolio standard enacted back in 1999 originally, and was set up at 10%. This has not increased over time. And the utilities have all met their requirements, their obligations under that standard long ago, and have no incentive to go out and buy renewable energy from producers like digester owners. Wisconsin also has an abundance of generating capacity. There's no need for new generation in general, and this means the market's not looking for additional generators. Demand for electricity in Wisconsin has been level or shrinking for the last decade, meaning it's not expected to grow in the near future as well, so market does not look good for additional generation. Another issue that's more recent, and this is not just happening in Wisconsin, but Wisconsin is kind of at the forefront. Utilities are restructuring their rates to have a higher relative proportion of their rates be in fixed charges versus the variable or volumetric charges that vary with the amount of energy that you use. What this does to renewable energy developers and generators and also to energy efficiency options is it undercuts the very economics of those types of systems or those types of strategies and options, making payback rates much longer and really making them much less attractive as energy management options. And then, just to stress again that the farm systems are really reliant on electricity sales currently to help make the economics of their digester systems work. And not getting good, the buyback rates that they're hoping for can make a lot of these systems kind of fall away. Financing is also difficult to obtain for anaerobic digester systems. Lenders don't tend to see them as income-generating assets and don't tend to, because the technology is not very locally well understood, bankers don't understand the technology, communities don't really understand what it is. Bankers tend to view digesters as just a manure storage system, no different than a manure lagoon. So getting a loan to build a lagoon, fairly hard to do. And for a number of these reasons, these systems, anaerobic digestion systems, have only been workable for large-scale operations thus far. There are a couple of small-scale operations in Wisconsin, small farms that are using anaerobic digestion, but cost numbers and economics info on those farms it has not really been available yet. And so looking at the lack of regulatory and policy support in Wisconsin, permitting can be really challenging and complicated. In some instances, requirements even appear contradictory, complying with state, federal, and local permitting. Also, regulators in state government in Wisconsin have been progressively defunding public benefits programs that promote renewables and efficiency, which has really hampered the industry. In Wisconsin, also, there are perceived restrictions on the amount of material you can bring on farm to co-digest without incurring additional permitting requirements, which limits farm digester owners' ability to earn tipping fees for that material. So that's another income opportunity that's limited. And it also, because these materials tend to increase biogas production, it limits that as well. And the industry, of course, would benefit by having maybe some publicly funded biogas research on biogas production technologies and methods and use of biogas, beneficial use of biogas and other byproducts of anaerobic digestion. And then the final issue, again, it's a competitive industry, and this is understandable. The technology providers are often in direct competition with each other for the few, very limited number of projects that are out there. Because of this, as you would probably expect, there's little communication or cooperation, little shared learning among technology providers and developers. If there were a way to do that, if there were more activity, the whole industry would definitely benefit. And also because of this competitive and individualized nature of biogas development, regional issues are generally not considered. Looking at regional waste management issues or water quality issues, those kinds of things, those things could benefit from having a more regional plan for development. So Joe Schultz, I think to the point where you can take over if you'd like.
Yes, thank you. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. Thank you, Joe. And yes, I'm going to step in here and discuss a few of these finer points in a little more detail and add some more perspective on some of the issues facing the ag biogas industry. And to put in a little theme here from our campaigning season here, I really feel that we have a strong need to make biogas great again. The industry in Wisconsin and nationally was really growing and looking prosperous, but it's really kind of come to a standstill. And the last 2 or 3 years, most discussions within the industry have been how do we rekindle this industry? How do we stop the stalemate? And now, as our discussion and Joe's earlier discussions mentioned, we're really starting to see an industry possibly in decline. The agricultural biogas industry that we've built is actually possibly going backwards. We're seeing systems shut down, and it's pretty significant. So how do we make this biogas industry great again? And I think the first thing we need to recognize is we need to improve the local markets for biogas energy. We need to look locally. We need, if you're a state like Wisconsin, we need to look at how do we promote and add Wisconsin-made bioenergy. And then also potential for national and carbon markets. There's opportunities there. Another thing we need to look at is improved investment mechanisms. How do we gain access to financing? How do we work wise and strong investment models into the industry? Also, we need to build some competitive cooperation between the installers, between the designers, between those individuals and groups implementing the systems at the ground level. And lastly, we need to help the actual system at the farm level. And we need to better promote specialized operator training and management and maintenance at the system level. Okay. So the first point I want to just key in on is we need to value Wisconsin-made energy. Currently, the energy industry is a $14 billion industry in Wisconsin. And this isn't true for just Wisconsin. I'm guessing a majority of states out there are importing much of the energy, be it the fossil fuel, gasoline, diesel fuel, natural gas, energy stocks, or coal, nuclear power, or other fossil fuel and alternative energy bases. So we need to focus on bringing that biogas, biomass, solar, and wind, which are all locally available and primary energy options, into the state. I'm sorry, here in a second, my computer went to sleep on me. There we go. Also, we need to look at the renewable portfolio standards within the state to again, get the utility companies, in this case, the electric providers, more interested in utilizing and developing in-state power production. As Joe mentioned, legislation has resulted in out-of-state renewable energy power comprising a majority of our current 10% renewable portfolio standard. Most of that renewable portfolio standard is energy that's imported into the state, be it hydro energy from Canada or wind energy from the western and midwestern states around us. So much of this renewable energy is imported, or the little bit that was in state is historical systems that were hydro for numbers of years. So we really need to look at how do we allow access through new standards, and bringing back a view of requiring some in-state renewable energy resources will greatly promote biogas interest. And so we really need to look at how do we drive this market and get this market going. And maybe we need to look at a 20% renewable portfolio standard by like 25. And this would increase, would be contingent on 10% of the energy produced be from in-state sources. This will, again, put together a market for this renewable energy and renewable energy initiatives. Next. And next, real market driver could be the implementation of carbon credit markets. And I know that's longly discussed, and it gets hot and cold, but in reality, a national or international carbon market would really, really benefit a state like Wisconsin, where we are biomass heavy. We have a lot of waste that can be converted to biogas, be it animal manure waste, industrial waste, forest and field waste. So there is a lot of potential for a state like Wisconsin in developing and implementing carbon marketing and carbon trading to their benefit. And this creates a new income stream and source to create additional value for biogas. And that's what we really need to do, is create value for biogas. The current system, especially based on electrical energy, is really not helping the situation. Next. Another issue that I feel really has possibly hurt the industry is the initiative to use cost share to pay or cover a portion of the cost of these systems. And I like to look at it, we should maybe look at this as a production enhanced incentive, putting the impetus of any public funds or investments into these systems, that these investments are based off of production rather than just a cash payment. The USDA and state-based grants and initiatives, may be part of the problem, in that in many cases they are buying into the system, and they should look at how they can buy into the system instead of buying down the system. And so I look at how can these agencies, these organizations, provide an enhancement for possibly specific components in the system, components that we see are either overlooked, underinvested into, or easily cut out of the plan when money gets tight. And these are very critical systems in the end that assist in the effectiveness, efficiency, and longevity of the program. So we're talking about things like biogas scrubbing that remove the hydrogen sulfide or moisture and mitigate many of the problems the industry has seen with some catastrophic engine failures. Also, maintenance contracting and ensuring that these systems are getting the proper maintenance, regular and routine oil changes, and system inspections that are completed by professionals that work with these systems day in and day out. And then another component is operator training. In many cases, these systems are not very well led into the proper operator training and the proper personnel that need to run the systems. And so the systems are implemented, the installer developer walks away, and there's a lot of question and uncertainty then on the system operation side. So there's a strong need for improved operator training. And these are areas where institutions, organizations can invest money, invest dollars into, and aid the final benefit of the system. And the last thing that the agencies can look at is enhancing these systems based on the products. So instead of giving an upfront grant, let's provide a grant based on the energy produced over time and an enhancement on that energy produced over time. Because we all know that if we're given a certain amount of money, we're going to find a place to spend it, and especially in large projects like this. Much of that money is spent up front, it's shuffled around, and 2 or 3 years in the project line, the money's gone, and if power purchase agreements change or there is some sort of high-cost failure within the system, money suddenly gets tight, and if our cash flow doesn't support a good kilowatt-hour price, then the system's going to be shut down because there is no benefit to running a system that costs money versus one that might be breaking money. So those are things we can look at. As a rule of thumb, the industry has kind of looked at around 9 cents a kilowatt hour as a break even. Currently, we've heard a lot of the power purchase agreements are likely somewhere in the 3.5 cents to 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So the industry, the agencies and individuals interested in this need to recognize that there is a big difference in what is break even for a system and what many of these systems are now getting. So we need to somehow bridge that gap and find a way to invest and incentivize to bridge that gap. Okay, thank you. Next, Joe. The next thing I just want to hit on is feel that there is a need for some competitive cooperation out there. Right now, the industry has been plagued with a lot of trial by error, and these are multi-million-dollar systems. And if you have catastrophic failures or breakdowns, major breakdowns in a very costly, expensive system like that, it's really not sustainable for that system, and it isn't sustainable for the development of the industry as well. The industry has gotten some black eyes over the years, and we really need to mitigate those issues, and working together will help with that. We need to promote a model of cooperation between the system designers and developers, but do it in a way that still allows for competitive development. And I think this all comes down to the cooperation will be enhanced with higher numbers of projects. Right now, there's such a current shortage of products that the atmosphere in the industry is really just fighting over crumbs, fighting over the handful of projects out there. So it's a very competitive, and nobody wants to share information. Nobody wants to give somebody else an advantage over the edge for fear of losing those few projects that are really holding the industry together. And that's really where the industry stands. Right now, Wisconsin has somewhere between 3 and 5 developers in state, and they are trying to work hard to find projects and keep things going, but we definitely are not seeing those types of numbers of projects going in at the current time. So we need to as an industry, figure out a way to promote some more competitive cooperation and really work on making everybody's systems better to improve the industry as a whole. Next. And then
Joe,
the last point.
Joe, I got a question for you. Is
Yeah.
Joe Schultz suggesting that the state and federal agency fund the operation and maintenance of anaerobic digester systems? What is the responsibility of the landowner or developer to properly assess, plan, and manage the anaerobic digester system?
No, I'm not trying to say they should provide enhancements specifically for that, but I do think that they should have a contingency in the funding that's provided that these operators, or they have an operator or a certified professional overseeing the operation. I wouldn't go out and give a municipal wastewater treatment plant $10 million unless I knew they were going to have a certified operator that's going to run that plant and be on board. And the same should go true with an agricultural system. We need to at least think about that in that terms, because there is a considerable public investment into these systems. So if we're going to make those investments, we need to maybe consider some contingencies that are going to ensure the proper future operation of those systems. So I hope that addresses that question, and we can cover that and more here at the end of the presentation. Thank you. So again, to finish this slide out, we really need to recognize that, and to build into that question, that the system's owners and the invested interests need to recognize the need for trained and dedicated personnel. I think in the agricultural industry specifically, that has been a clear oversight in many cases. The farms really looked at these as in-place technologies or systems that work into their current operations. And really these are wastewater treatment plants. These are biological systems, and they need to be managed and controlled outside of the regular farm operations. They aren't something that the farmer can just hop in and drive away. And that's where farmers have, I think, gotten hung up over the years. It is a standalone operation that needs to be recognized and managed as such. And the industry needs to realize that even municipal and industrial systems face trials, and these systems are overseen by multiple operators in many cases with specialized trainings for different steps in the process even. So a farm may look at this system as one system, but the anaerobic digestion operation is a multitude of operations and processes. So the whole evaluation of how these systems are operated and managed on the farm level need to be reevaluated, especially in the future as we hopefully bring this industry back in the forefront and grow it. So I think that covers that. We'll go next. So why do we care? At the end of the day, why do we want to see biogas on the farms? Well, AgSTAR estimates that there are over 251 dairy farms in Wisconsin that could use a digester profitably. Now, we say that word profitably loosely in the sense that right now that is not the case probably. In most cases, the financial setup doesn't look real favorable for many of these systems, and that's why systems are actually shutting down. So there is potential there. There's a great energy source available through these different dairy, beef, large livestock type operations. And agriculture and the dairy industry is important to Wisconsin's economy. It's a $24 billion per year economic activity, and biogas can enhance this industry and add more value to the ag industry in the state. And it also allows to interconnect the environment and the economy. In a state where most of the energy is imported, biogas can kind of almost take out two birds with one stone here, in that we can improve the environment through biogas, plus we can improve the economy. And it's not a loss in the economy. We can bring value, add value to the waste to the dairy and agricultural waste and make that into a valuable asset. So that's really why I think we should care. Okay, and that really concludes our presentation. Is there any other questions for Joe Kramer or myself? Appreciate, Joe, you did a great job. And thank you, Julia, for your help. So let's open this up for questions and hopefully continue the conversation.
Sure. We haven't had anything yet, but I'll give people a few minutes here to type in your questions while we're waiting for people to ask their questions today. If you have further questions or anything else, Joe and Joe's contact information is up on the screen. So feel free to contact them at any time with questions or anything like that. So yeah, we'll wait here just a little bit and see if we have any other incoming questions. Also, while we're waiting, this presentation has been recorded, so if you are interested in the recording, go ahead and email me or where you signed up for the webinar initially. You can always request that information there for the recording. It'll take probably a couple of days for the recording to be uploaded, but it should be there in the next couple of days. We've got another question. I want to ask about biogas production. Do you see value in enhancing the value for the gas for pipeline injection rather than electricity?
This is Joe Kramer. I can field that one.
Sure.
That's certainly another option. And if you're not getting what you want for in a power purchase agreement, a sustainable payback arrangement, that's another thing to look at. In Wisconsin, there have been some studies looking at what's the potential for cleanup and pipeline insertion. There are a number of hurdles in the way of that right now. I mean, one of the primary ones is probably that natural gas prices have been pretty low, and unless you're getting back to Joe Schultz's point about carbon markets, unless there's a price on carbon, making biogas more valued for its carbon profile, it's probably not going to be worth going through the expense of and negotiation of arranging an insertion into a pipeline for your biogas. Now, there may be opportunities for biogas use, biogas production and use by individual industries who want to include their carbon footprint. That's going to involve some co-location of facilities or pipeline production. But I think in the short run, that looks like maybe a more promising area to look. Joe Schultz, did you want to add anything?
Well, I guess to add into that and build off of it, there may be even better opportunity in the short term here to bypass the pipeline and look at opportunities through compressed natural gas and in utilizing compressed natural gas or compressed biogas, because then if we can utilize the compressed gas, compressed biogas in transportation fuels, for instance, then we're competing against a diesel-based pricing system, which is much more favorable. But again, it all comes down to economics, and if you're going to compress a gas, natural gas is so cheap now, that many of these systems are just compressing natural gas. So why compress take the time and energy to clean and scrub biogas and compress it to operate these systems when compressed natural gas is very economical and easy to access. So there is some opportunities out there. Again, it's difficult to compete in this current market.
All right, we've got another question. Is this a technology that could be built and operated independent of a farm operation using the raw materials from the farm? All or most of the proceeds would or could go to the digester owner?
Yeah, and that's a model that's been used extensively with many of the recent systems, be it a centralized digester where the waste is pumped to a centralized location, so a collection point from multiple farms, or there have been systems out there that they haven't been built or designed yet, but were considered to transport the gas to a centralized location where the gas could be better handled, either through an engine genset type system or cleaned and put into pipeline or compressed. So those systems are looked at and implemented, but one of the difficulties is, especially on the agricultural side, is manure wastes are a low value biogas feedstock. The amount of biogas produced per unit of material is quite poor as compared to many of the industrial feedstocks or higher strength feedstocks that are used for biogas production. So that's another thing that makes the agricultural side a bit more difficult with that type of system. You're just you end up pumping too much water and don't get enough benefit from that byproduct. So, Joe, you can add on to that with your considerations there in the Madison area.
Yeah, there are. I know of at least one system out there where, as an independent owner, running or owning and operating a system, processing manure from area farms, and also food stock waste to increase biogas production. And that's, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's just in Minnesota. It's like something like Natural Systems Utilities or something like that. But they also employ energy storage because with I think they're feeding energy to a co-op. They have a variable time of day power purchase agreement. So they get a higher amount of or a higher purchase amount for electricity generated on peak, and it's lower for off-peak. So they store some biogas and generate really heavily on peak to try to make the economics work a little better. So it's definitely something, and Joe has totally hit the nail on the head in that you can't move manure very far. It's big and heavy, and it's mostly water. So if you're going to be processing manure, the system needs to be installed very close to the farms where the manure is coming from, because you don't want to end up spending a lot of money on diesel to get the manure to the digester.
All right, I don't see any other questions. I again thank you everyone that joined us this morning, and we hope you have a great day, and thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us. And again, if you're interested in the recording, you can always contact me. My name is Julia Frontera. You probably had that information on the invitation that you got. Other than that, you guys have a great day.